Hello, and welcome to episode 9 of Fun with Robotics. Today I'd like to talk about my router table. And unfortunately, no, it's not a CNC router table. It's just a manual router table, but very useful nonetheless for making parts for your robot. So when I was working on my table saw and expanding that, I thought maybe I would add a router to one of the wings. That's something you typically see on the table saws that people modify. And then I was looking through YouTube and I saw a design from someone on there that I thought was actually quite brilliant. And I thought, maybe I should try to build one of those. Now, just to be clear, I did not use this person's plans. He actually has plans for his router, and I'll put a link to his video and his website where you can download those plans. But like I said, I did not download his plans and I did not use his plans. All I did was look at his design and then come up with my own version of it. So nevertheless, I think it's a brilliant design and I think he deserves credit for coming up with it, if in fact he did come up with it, because he's not citing anybody else, so I'm assuming that it is his design. So what's unique about this particular design is that the platform that the router is mounted to, it's vertically mounted, the platform itself actually rotates. And I think that really provides a lot of additional functionality that you can do with a manual router table. Now, I've seen some other designs that are similar. They have the same sort of theme with a tilting platform. I think on the Stumpy Nubs website, he's prototyping a tilting router, which I think he's hitting on the same notes, same idea, and I think it's cool, but with this particular design, it's all one integrated unit, and I think that's what really makes it probably a little bit better. So let's have a look at the router table that I just finished, and I'll tell you all the features about it and why I think it's a cool design. Let's have a look. Here's the router, and it's in its standard configuration right now. It's basically like any other router table. You've got the top surface here with a fence that your work material runs along, and then in the center here is the mount for the actual router. Now, I actually decided that I would purchase a professional router lift. I thought about building my own, and it just didn't make a lot of sense to do that for the cost. It just would have been a lot more time consuming to build my own than it would be to just pay for one and use one that's pre-built. This is not the most expensive router lift out there. It's actually one of the cheapest, but it definitely suits my purpose. It has all the features that I really need and wanted in a router lift, so I think this will work out just fine. The fence here is nice and tall. It's got a couple of movable front covers that allow me to close in on the bit here for better dust collection. Plus there's some T-track here for mounting, say, some feather boards to hold your workpiece down to the surface of the table. And then this can be moved forward or backward on the table just by sliding it. It's a little bit sticky sometimes, but it'll move forward and back. In fact, and then when you're in position, you just simply lock it, and it won't move. It's really nice and solid. I really love these hold down clips. They work very nicely. So let me remove it for the rest of the video so you can see it a little bit better. It's not light, it's kind of heavy, but it works. So here the router has a crank and a lock. So right now it's locked. If I unlock it, I can just crank this and raise the router bit. If I want to change the router bit, I can just bring it right up. Use the tools to change the bit and then put it back down. Now you can't see this, I'll bring the camera in a little closer in a bit, but there is a incremental circle here that tells you exactly how far in 64ths of an inch the router bit is coming up or going down. So you can get very fine control using the lift here. So I lower it back down, lock it, and then put the router, I guess it's like a throat plate for a table saw. Unfortunately, it's not a zero clearance. I mean, I guess you could make some zero clearance ones, but this one seems good for the moment. You put this on and then you lock it in place like that, and it won't move. So if I just spin it around here, you'll see that it has generally 3 degrees of freedom. This top piece here will move in and out. So I can slide this in and out and lock it. I can also raise and lower this piece. Now this is, raising and lowering this is probably the most difficult thing to do on this router table. I think it would be a really cool idea to add a lift mechanism here to raise and lower this nice and steady and smooth. But for right now I just do it manually. So let me just put this back in position. Oops. Lock this, just get a little space. And then I can lower it. Just sort of hold it while I loosen these, and then it can go down. You put it where you want it, and lock it in place. And then, if you want, you can rotate this back piece however you like. This is probably causing a... You can rotate this to whatever angle you want, all the way up to vertical if you want to, and then lock it in place. And then you can move this board in. And then feed your material against the router bit. So you can see it offers quite a bit of flexibility in terms of the configurations you can do your routing in. So then also over here, I just, well, you can just put it the other way. First of all, you can see in the back how the router is mounted, and then there's a cord here. It's got a lot of flexibility, a lot of length, extra length, so it's not tied up when it's rotating up and down. Now, on the video that I put in the section below, the guy who came up with this design, he had it so that his router would move in this direction. So he had a crank system here, if you watch the video, and he moves the router this way. I thought that was a good idea, but I really wanted to have a router lift, and having a router lift and making it move in this horizontal direction would have been rather difficult. Not impossible, but more difficult. So I decided to go with the router lift, skip the cranking mechanism to move the router this way, and then to simulate his movement this way by making this center section move up and down. So if I wanted to get a little closer, as you can see, this is the most difficult part, getting it to go up and down smoothly. That's why I say having a lift here with maybe like a scissor jack or something that you can crank it up and down smoothly would be a really nice addition to it. But you can see now that I've changed the distance to the bit so that it can be, you can route it a different position. And then of course if you want to do it at an angle, slide this out, change your angle here. Lock it in place, and then push this forward and lock it in place. So now you have a flat and an angle that you can run your material through the router bit at. Plus you can add the fence here if you want to hold something down to this flat section. Let me just bring the camera over. I'll give you some close-up shots of how it's constructed, and that's probably it. I don't think I'm going to do any kind of dimensions for this. Like I said, the router that I copied, they already have plans for theirs, and I don't see any need for me to do plans of my own since his is available from his website. But if there is a lot of interest, then maybe I'll deconstruct this and I'll come up with my own set of plans. The one thing that I would probably do with this would be to move this router plate down a little bit. It's really not in the right position. It should be a little bit closer to this table here, so I can move this up and down closer to the bit. But other than that, I think the design has come out pretty good. It certainly is useful the way it is right now, and hopefully I'll get a lot of use out of it. One other thing I'd like to do in the future would be to add 2 miter slots here on this table so that I can create a miter sled for routing small pieces. Like for example, if I wanted to route the edge of this, just doing it freehand wouldn't be all that safe. But if I had a miter sled, I could keep this nice and rigid as I moved this end through the bit. And so having 2 miter slots, or even just 1 miter slot would do. 2 would be better, 1 would be okay. Certainly better than trying to hand feed this through a skinny piece like that through the bit. So yeah, that is one thing I'd like to do in the future. Another would be to have that lift mechanism here to make this section move up and down smoothly. And and then finally add some dust collection to the back fence, which would also be nice. But that's going to be maybe in a future video. A couple additional thoughts. If you're going to build a router table like this, or if you're going to build somebody else's router table, there's a couple of things that you should probably do to prepare for that particular build. One of the most important is making sure your table saw is tuned up make sure that you can cut square pieces of wood. And I mean as accurate as you can possibly make it. If you haven't done so already, build yourself a table saw sled. That helps tremendously. Also, I would recommend either having your current crosscut blade sharpened or buy a new one. Being able to cut nice, smooth, square pieces of wood for the assembly of this really helped quite a bit. I probably made the most accurate cuts that I possibly could when I was building this. And it paid off because it went together rather smoothly, having all nice square pieces. And even the cart itself, if you have like a thickness planer, I would take the 2x4s that you're going to use to build a cart and actually run them through your thickness planer, make sure they're the same thickness, make sure they're nice and straight, and that way you can build a nice square box for the cart. Because if your cart is tilted a little bit, then raising and lowering this thing is going to be even worse for you than it is for me. It's just not going to work quite right. You've got to have nice, straight, smooth cuts to build something like this. So do yourself a favor and prepare for it. And also, it's not a 1 or 2 day build. This was, several weekends at work trying to come up with a design and build this. So don't rush it. Just take your time and just plan on it being at least a several weeks of build time. And you won't get frustrated if you do that. So, all right, I'm going to bring the camera in and I'll just show you some of the details of how it's constructed, and then we'll do a wrap up. This is probably the most critical part of the design, this tilting section here. It's really sort of a rectangular box with one side missing, and then there are some supports in here to help keep the table nice and flat, plus some other supports to keep these supports square. And then I'll give you a cross-section view. Here, this is a radius that I used a template for with my router to cut. In fact, I think I have it. I don't know if this is the exact one I used, but I made something like this. The router sits here, and then I put just a nail here, and then I spun the router on a nail. This just holds the router to this, and then this spins and does the cut like that. So that's what I used to make this nice smooth round cut. And then over here, there is some angles to this piece that allows you to bring this horizontal surface right up tight against the tabletop. And also this is cut back. In case you have this tilted, it allows you to get close to the table. Push that in like that. So there's no interference here with the table if it's at an angle. And then I added just a simple cord switch that I can turn the router on and off. So that was helpful. And this part that slides up and down basically just rides within 2 vertical pieces. You can see here, a little bit easier to see if I spin it. There's a piece here and a piece here, and it just rides within those 2 brackets up and down. And then the 2 knobs on the end tighten to hold it in place. And that's it. And then again, as I mentioned, this is just nothing but a big box, very square box that the whole thing sits on top of. In fact, the side panels are all one piece. You've got this piece here, and then it goes up here and it spins on this one axle. Now, let me turn this around so you can see what it looks like. So this is just the back side of that piece, and this is where the whole thing pivots right there. And it's nothing more than a carriage bolt that it pivots on. And it's fairly well balanced, so you don't feel like when you're tilting it, it's going to drop down or either one way or the other. When you loosen it, it kind of stays in place. And you can tilt it. I mean, you have to hold it up a little bit, but it's somewhat well balanced. Finally, you can see here with the fence on how this slides and then just locks in place. It just clips onto the underside of the tabletop. And man, that really holds. It does not move. And you can even, with these particular clips, I bought these at Harbor Freight, by the way. You can tighten them and make them even tighter if you want. But it's just reasonably tight and makes it hold really, really well. So I keep having a few afterthoughts for this video. And if you're going to use the same router lift that I'm using, which is the cheapest JessEm, you want to make sure that the router that you use in it has the right diameter cylinder to fit the router lift. So I wanted to have a router in this machine permanently. I didn't want to have to be taking it out if I wanted to use it as a hand router. And my hand router was Hitachi. I really liked this router. It has served me long and well. And so I rushed to buy an additional Hitachi to put in here permanently. And unfortunately, what happened was the body of this router, when you remove the base plate, the diameter of this section here was too small for the router lift. So what it does is you put it in there and it actually, you screw it down and it clamps on here and holds it in place. But it doesn't have a lot of play. You've got to choose a router with the proper diameter throat to match your router lift. So my additional Hitachi didn't do me any good. So I ended up buying a fairly inexpensive Harbor Freight model that has the right diameter throat to go into the router lift. And it seems to work pretty well. I mean, I haven't used it a whole lot, so I can't really talk to the quality of this router, but it's working, and you know, maybe in a future video I'll tell you if there's any problems with it. But this is actually what I'm using right now, and it fits into the JessEm Rout-R-Lift. So just be aware that you've got to match the router with the lift. And I think I was too boneheaded to read the instructions when they tell you what routers this particular lift supports. So do yourself a favor and read the list of supported routers for the lift before you buy one. So you can avoid the problems that I was not able to. Well, that's a wrap for episode 9. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will put the make of the router lift that I used in the links below. Again, it was just a fairly inexpensive router lift, but if you want to know the exact make and model, I'll put it in the description. Also, if you have any questions, you can also send me an email to info@theroboticscodedepot.com, and I'll get back to you as quick as I can. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you like these kind of videos. And we'll see you next time.